You are welcome in the Business Pavilion of Egypt, and one of the important side events running by our dear member company, Sidpec. This side event today talking about eco-friendly products and the good work that Sidpec is doing toward sustainability. I will let the floor first. My name is Engineer Ahmed Kamal. I'm the technical advisor for climate change and part of the Egyptian delegation under Federation of Egyptian Industry in climate change in COP27. It's my honor to present Dr. Engineer Muhammad Ibrahim, the chairman and CEO of Sidpec, to start the keynote speak. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Dear all, I would like to welcome you all in our event today, Climate Justice and Sidpec Plan to Add Eco-Friendly Products. Actually, all the globe now is talking about the harmful effect of the wastes that accumulated in our lands, ocean, and seas. We came today with a solution that we think it will be a great contribution in reduction wastes, especially those come from single-use plastics application. Also, these solutions will decrease greenhouse gas. Okay, will decrease greenhouse gas emission. As we will depend on a renewable feedstock and producing polymers that will be non-toxic, biodegradable. We are seeing this new trend is totally green and able to solve many environmental problems. We are seeing a lot of obstacles in our road to achieve this target. We need financial solution that can support green projects and also seeking support from the government and from legalization entities. Sustainability is everyone's responsibility, and we came today to indicate that. We all totally convinced that sustainability is no longer about doing less harm. It is about doing more good. Let me to speak something by Arabic language as same as what I said by English. احنا كلنا العالم كله مش مصر بس بنواجه مشكلة البلاستيك. البلاستيك actually مشاكل البلاستيك هي بتعتمد على السنجل يوز بلاستيك، البلاستيك اللي بيستخدم لمرة واحدة. ده اللي العالم بيعاني منه واللي احنا مش عارفين نتخلص منه. مش عارفين نتخلص منه عشان مش عارفين نعمل ريتريف للبلاستيك ده ونعمل ريسايكلينج له. فهي دي المشكلة اللي احنا كلنا بنواجهها. المشكلة دي ممكن بمنتهى البساطة تتحل لو وجدنا ماتيريال بديلة للبلاستيك. ده اللي سيدبك بتفكر فيه دلوقتي وده اللي ممكن يكون ترند في المستقبل. ان البدائل حاليا هي بدائل غير جيدة، سواء الزجاج لان استخدامه لكميات غير عادية من الطاقة او للورق اللي بيستخدم كميات من الاشجار احنا في امس الاحتياج اليها. الحل البديل هو انتاج البلاستيك بايو بلاستيك من الماتيريال دي في الاصل هي ويست، العالم بيعاني عشان يتخلص منها، فكوني انتج منها البلاستيك فدي احنا شايفين هي دي الاضافه اللي ممكن تكون في مجال الرينيوبل والبايو بيز بلاستيكس. انا بشكركم على حضوركم واسيب زملائي يتفضلوا يكملوا البرزنتيشن. اشكركم.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Ahmed Kamal. It's an honor to having you today with us. My name is Muhammad Salahuddin. I'm working as the Quality Energy and Excellence General Manager in Sidpec. The scope of my department is including sustainability and strategic planning. Let me welcome all the attendees to our session today, that I believe it is an important and exciting one to present the need for finance and supportive legislation for producing eco-friendly products, like bio-based plastic, where we claim that it is a kind of demonstration for climate justice. We focus on climate justice, especially when we are in COP27 in Egypt as a representative for Africa. African countries are suffering a lot of the climate change, where these countries are responsible for only 3% of the global greenhouse gases emissions. African countries are ahead to develop, and it is unfair to prevent them from developing by any means. We respect our responsibilities to keep our eyes on environment while developing our economy. This is our motivation to add eco-friendly products to our product portfolio in Sidpec. We at Sidpec strongly believe in our role towards the environment, society, and of course, the economy is unnegotiable, and that those three pillars of sustainability guide our strategy and are clear in our objectives formulation and our daily practices and way of doing business. This appears clearly in Sidpec policy and in our sustainability report that was annually published since 2014. In addition to our high standard measures towards environment protection and monitoring of emissions, not for the purpose of just not violating the law, but reaching the minimum values for emissions as far as we can. Also, we embrace energy efficiency as a mean for saving the environment, together with being a mean to have an economic production. And this is our slogan in our company: economic production business model that implementing a robust energy management system that is ISO 15001 certified since 2014. We had many success stories in the field of energy efficiency and performing periodically energy reviews that we concluded with a strategic energy review that was done through a consultant in 2021 that revealed a lot of saving opportunities and a clear roadmap for the coming years. And finally, just this year, we were among 4 Egyptian companies that are committed to the SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiative, and waiting for the validation stage of our target by the beginning of the next year. Needless to say that we are now studying the production of an eco-friendly plastic products, PLA or polylactic acid, to contribute effectively in beating single-use plastic and replace the fossil-based plastic in this kind of applications by bio-based plastic. And let's start our session today by presentation by my colleague, Mr. Yasser Ibrahim, Sidpec's PLA project leader, to get an idea about the bioplastics and its applications, also the main basis for Sidpec's PLA project and the challenges that facing this type of green projects. He will present Sidpec efforts to build the first PLA plant in Africa. So please, Mr. Yasser, I will leave the floor to you now.
Firstly, I want to welcome you all to our session today. And also I want to thank COP27 and FEI for giving us this opportunity to present Sidpec's new direction in production of eco-friendly bio-based bioplastics. Let me start my presentation with a very critical question. Do you think the plastic is a pure evil? Many will reply with yes. The plastic is contaminating our life and contaminating our seas and oceans, and they may kill the marine life. But at the same time, or on other hand, the plastics is doing a very critical role in our life. We are using plastics 24 hours a day. We are using plastics in energy production, also in constructions, transportation, electronics, in many applications. And we are heavily using plastics in packaging and consumer goods. Also, the plastics play a very critical role in providing pathogen-free food to the remote areas in the world. I have adapted here the slogan of World Food Program, and I am saying that good packaging helps in saving lives and changing lives. Also, the plastics played a very critical role during our pandemic. The plastics offered a level of protection that no any other material can offer. But at the same time, we noticed during the pandemic that the levels of pollution has increased dramatically. So what is the problem? The problem is that the plastics is produced from fossil fuels and produce or emit a lot of carbon dioxide. And maybe in some applications, we use this plastic for just a minute. That's what we call it a single-use plastic. That's what we call it a single-use plastics. So what is the solution? Actually, the solution is simply in the circular economy. Ellen MacArthur Foundations have put a great definition for circular economy. But let me first tell you something about the linear economy. The linear economy is getting the raw materials from the earth, transfer it to products, and the products, after its life, became a waste. But in circular economy, based in this great definition, we will depend on a renewable feedstocks. These renewable feedstocks will produce a biodegradable and combustible products. And at the end of these lives, these biodegradable products can transfer to biomass, carbon dioxide, and water to produce more and more renewable resources. The bioplastics is a very good example about the circular economy. As we can see, we will depend on renewable resources. These renewable resources can produce bio-based, biodegradable plastic products that we can use it, but at the end of its life, it will all totally transfer or converted to biomass, carbon dioxide, and water. Here I want to be familiarized with two definitions, the bio-based and biodegradable. The bio-based is that any plastic that is come from renewable sources like vegetable oils, straws, corn, and agriculture wastes. Biodegradable plastics that any plastic that after chemical or microorganisms processing transferred to be carbon dioxide, biomass, and water. Here I wanted to highlight three facts that is related to each other. Production of bioplastics has a lower gas emissions than the conventional plastics. And also some researchers tell us that this decrease is around 25%. And also, if we are seeing bioplastics itself, there is zero increase in carbon dioxide due to bioplastics, because any amount of carbon dioxide that will be emitted during the production process or during the combustion or biodegradation of the bioplastics will be absorbed again by the renewable resources that is used in the production of this plastic. Here is a small or just a brief description about the feedstocks. Now, many companies is depending on agriculture feedstocks like starch from corn, but there is many researches to produce bioplastics from lignocellulosic non-food feedstocks, and we call it second generation feedstocks for bioplastics. Also, there is some researches to produce the bioplastics from the agriculture waste, like the falling leaves and the plant stems, and we call it third generation. And I think maybe this will be the solution for the bioplastics, for not depending on food feedstocks. This slide is very important because we know that there is many concerns the bioplastics will take from the food areas and the food quota to transfer it to plastic. But actually, we are just using 0.013% from the global agriculture area to produce bioplastics. And it is expected by 2026, after increasing the capacity for bioplastics, to just reach 0.058%. This graph gives us some ideas about the figures of production. Now, the total global production of bioplastics is around 4.7 million tons, and it is expected to reach 7.5 by 2026. Here also a very important graph about the percentage of each application of bioplastics. As you can see here, the packaging is around 50% from the total production of bioplastics. And this is a good thing because most of the waste and single-use applications is coming from the food packaging. And at 2026, this percentage, I think it will have the same figure. Here also a very good graph about the percentage of each bioplastics produced globally. BioBat and PLA is nearly about 40% from the total global production of bioplastics. It is expected for BioBat to reach 30% and for PLA to be 10%. But the problem with BioBat is that it is coming from fossil fuel. It is biodegradable plastic, but come from fossil fuel. But PLA comes from is a bio-based and biodegradable plastic, and we are seeing a good potential in PLA. Here is just a diagram showing the locations and the capacities for global production of bioplastics. As we can see, there is no plants in Africa and the Middle East, and it is not expected by 2026 to have any plant in this area, but Sidpec has put a target and set a target to put Africa and the Middle East on the track. This is the second part of my presentation. It's about our PLA project. As we can see, we are targeting to produce PLA. This is the PLA life cycle. It is a circular economy. Typical example, we will depend on corn or any renewable feedstock like molasses or bagasse. Through some wet milling, we will get the glucose. The glucose, after some fermentation process, will produce lactic acid. Lactic acid, through some polymerization, will produce a PLA. The PLA is a very good plastic material. Many applications can be produced from the PLA, and at the end of its life can be combusted or biodegraded. Here I want to give you some idea about the applications of PLA, and all of them is biodegradable and combustible. Shopping bags can be produced from PLA, trash bags, mulch films for agriculture applications, cups coffee capsules, flexible trays, straws, all types of bottles, medical masks, and even the socks and the bed sheets can be produced from PLA. And also there is a very important application for PLA because the 3D printing filaments is produced from PLA polymer. Here's some information about our project. Actually, we have made some in-house economic studies for this project, and we got to the conclusion that the minimum economic capacity for this plant is 20 KTA. Now we are planning to depend on glucose syrup, but we are studying another feedstocks from second generation. The plant location will be in Alexandria, Egypt, and we are in contact with many technology providers like Alpine, Sulzer, and Uda and Benta Fisher. The project's time is around 36 months. Now we are in the phase of market study. We have hired a world-class consultant for doing a market study for this project, and it is expected to carry out a full economic and feasibility study by the first quarter of next year. Here is the important part in our presentation, because, as I said, we have made some financial studies for this project, and the outcome is below our expectations. But we are seeking a suitable financing mechanism for these projects, and the good news that we have found that based on the green bond principles which issued by ICMA, we are totally aligned with it. We have noted that the project can fit and eligible for pollution prevention and control, and also the circular economy adapted products. The project needs a lot of incentives and support. We are seeking legislations and regulations to favoring biodegradable plastics. We need tax and customs exemptions. We need low-cost fuel and low-cost power, because the OpEx of bioplastics production is dramatically high. Here I have put just a quote that I found it so nice and fit here. Sustainability is no longer about doing less harm, it is about doing more good. And I think we will do more good things for sustainability. Simply, when we establish a biodegradable plant in Egypt, we are committed to the SDG number 9 by depending on renewable resources and low impact and low carbon dioxide emission proceeds. We are committed to SDG number 12, and for sure, by getting no waste and no greenhouse gases, we are committed to SDGs 13, 14, and 15, so we can get a clean land, seas, and oceans. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Yasser, for the informative presentation. Now, let me welcome our panelists, Mr. Ayman Higazi and Ms. Jidis Kaya. Please join me. Mr. Ayman Higazi, Head of Corporate Banking, National Bank of Egypt. He has 27 years experience in Egyptian and Gulf banks in the field of investment, private equity, and corporate finance. And Ms. Gedis Kaya, she is the managing partner of Mondo Verde Climate. She has worked with many international organizations, investors, and corporate, advising them on climate risks and options of climate finance. She has been a climate advocate for the last 15 years with work on carbon markets, and carbon pricing. Welcome again, and it's our pleasure and honor to having you with us today to discuss the eco-friendly product. And let me start by a question to Ms. Daya about the eco-friendly products which can significantly improve the environment by reducing waste, energy, and chemicals. These products won't be harmful to the environment during production, use, or disposal, since they are low in chemicals while high in natural ingredients. Yet, a question after the information presented by my colleague, Mr. Yasser, is how you can make a product eco-friendly. And also, I want to know some reflections from your side about the impact on climate change mitigation by using eco-friendly products and by producing eco-friendly products.
Thank you. I also would like to thank the executive management and officials of Sidpec for inviting me to this panel. What makes a product eco-friendly is not a very clear definition. We just know that in general, eco-friendly products do no harm to environment, but it is not. There is a lot of ambiguity in that sense because when you talk about the harm to environment, at what level and in which spectrum, we don't know. In general, we can say that do no harm to soil, water, and air. No soil air pollution, no climate hazard. So these make all these products eco-friendly. But recently we see a trend, eco-friendly products are also combined with a more social do no harm aspect, because in addition to do no harm to soil, water, and climate, we can also attach a sustainability parameter to it by saying how is it manufactured, what are the conditions on site in terms of workers' health and other social issues. So this makes it a bit of not clear when we define eco-friendly products. And when we come to the petrochemical products and plastics particularly, we know that they are just by definition not eco-friendly because the extraction is messy, the transportation, the manufacturing is very energy intensive, and it's usually done by fossil fuels. So by definition, they are not eco-friendly. But thanks to technology and good practice, we can make them relatively eco-friendly. So there's a lot of work right now from many companies. And when we look at the significance of that work, it's not really a significant portion of the market. And that work is actually boils down to three aspects. It's either using recycled materials or biofibers, plastics, or just using some practice to make it low carbon or carbon neutral. So all these three categories are actually serving for eco-friendly products. And there's a very recent trend, and it's also making these products labeling, like giving them a label and standard. But lack of international standards, not really widely used standards, that's also impacting the liquidity of these products. So that makes also the practice of low carbon petrochemicals and plastics more nascent in the market. And from the climate perspective, all these three aspects that I just defined, recycling, low carbon by offsetting or by using renewable energy for manufacturing, and bioplastics, these are all good for the climate because it's reducing the emissions in very general terms. Of course, there's some practice-specific, project-specific aspects of it, but we can say that in general, these are really GHG reduction sector practices. But of course, there are some issues with that, how you access the feedstock and how you actually make it more competitive in the market. Maybe we can discuss that later.
Thank you, Jadiz. Actually, the labeling of low carbon petrochemicals is a remarkable point, actually. And now, as we found in the presentation, we need the finance because the projects like the biodegradable projects has to be encouraged by the finance. And as National Bank of Egypt is the largest bank in Egypt, how do you see the role of Egyptian banks in energy and climate project finance?
Thank you. I am very pleased and I'm glad to attend this panel with our partner Sidpec. It's very important to realize and impress our that as idea that the climate finance is here and born to stay. Without financing, climate and green investment are hardly possible. So Egyptian banks have the crucial role to play in energy transition and sustainability in general. National Bank of Egypt, NBE, being a largest bank in Egypt, about 33 to 34% of total market share, has a major role to play in transformation and awareness and the impact-driven approach. We support the implementation of government strategies such as Egypt Vision 2030, National Climate Change Strategy on 2050. We can clearly see the role the Egyptian banking sector are playing in sustainable project. We have many sectors in sustainable finance, like emissions reductions, environmental friendly project, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and recycling. We have in National Bank of Egypt financed many projects in many sectors like solar power stations, recycling project, green hydrogen, recycling. And now we are in pipeline new project in sustainability like electric vehicle manufacturing called Nasr Automotive, and new green hydrogen, and last one, high-speed train. It's necessary to, when we put our resilient structure, to start our structure and to take everything from strategy to governance, risk management, KPIs, and climate targets. On our macro level, when if we want to move from pledges to implementation, it's very necessary to put or to pump a fund and to be channeled through banking sector, whether it being in grant or technical assistance or financing. And after the second question, I will make some breakdown about the progress in climate finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ayman. Actually, it's very interesting to know that the NBE is financing the high-speed train and also the green hydrogen projects But we are eagerly need to add to these projects some projects like the BLA project actually. Back to Gide's, actually, I want to hear from you about the hurdles that could be overcome when we are talking about the eco-friendly products.
I think some of the hurdles have been just mentioned because apart from motivation, the investors and business owners, they need some finance and they need financial incentives. That's definitely one of the hurdles we need to get over. But what are the underlying conditions that create those financial hurdles apart from lack of finance and actually maybe a risk perspective from the creditors to finance these projects? There is also some market conditions. And for instance, when you look at the amount of bioplastics used in the market in 2021, according to ISSC, is 7.8 million tons. And the whole global market is around 300 million tons. So the share is very, very small. Part of that is maybe it's a new thing in the industry and the petrochemical companies, they are still cautious. However, the other side of the point is the feedstock competition, because if you do recycled plastic, you need to collect waste and you need to make sure that there's enough feedstock. If it is bioplastics, there's competition with agriculture, and more and more we see that regulations are actually protecting the agriculture to compete against the feedstock for bioplastics. So with all these market conditions, there are different hurdles. So we need incentives, we need better policy frameworks from the governments, we need standards to liquidate the market, because right now, the end buyer and the intermediary at least, they need to know that what they're buying as a sustainable product is really sustainable, and that can only be guaranteed by an international label that is endorsed by multiple parties and used frequently enough so that it is a label. And unfortunately, we don't have that. So whatever we are offering to the market from the investor side, from the company side, it claims to be eco-friendly, but it is not really clear how eco-friendly it is from the buyer's perspective. On the other hand, we rely here on the motivation and the commitment from the top management. All these environmental regulations and incentives may help, but as long as we don't have top management commitment for these products and understanding the reality of the climate change and committing to long-term goals, we are not going to see any change in the market.
Thank you very much for this point, because we in Sidpec we feel this issue regarding the commitment of top management very well, because our CEO is, in my opinion, is one of the sustainability advocate actually, and we are lucky to have him. Okay, let me just ask a question to Mr. Yasser according to the presentation. I have some hypothetical question. Are you seeing a potential in the bioplastic industry and positive market indicators that can let us able to reach a point that the conventional plastic being totally replaced by the bioplastics?
Actually, the bioplastics is this. Yes. Sure. Actually, the bioplastics is struggling in this field, because when you compare the capex and the opex of bioplastics production to the conventional plastics, it is totally uncomparable. But technically, 70 to 80% from the applications of conventional plastics can be covered by the bioplastics. But as I said, the high OPEX of production needs incentives, needs support, needs government support, because the cost is so high. Personally, I consider till now the bioplastics as a luxury products, cannot be offered to everybody. So if there is some support to decrease the capex and the opex, also the second generation, which will make a breakthrough in production opex, maybe at this point we can reach the full coverage of bioplastics, mainly in the single-use applications. That is the most source of pollution in the globe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yasser. I always find you as a very optimistic, actually. But let me go to another point to get the opportunity of having Mr. Ayman with us today. And I asked you to somehow elaborate on National Bank of Egypt's concepts for sustainable financing and what this will mean for the bank's lending operations.
National Bank of Egypt is a leader among the Egyptian banks with EPAB 1, Environmental Pollution Abatement Program, that was launched in 1998. In this time, where the Egyptian market were not hear anything about the sustainability or climate or carbon finance. After our success on EPAB 1, we go to EPAB 2 and EPAB 3, and we introduced the idea of decarbonization to cement, petrochemicals, and fertilizer and other building material. Now, we are in our stage, in the latest stage of EPAB 3. We have some partners and donors in sustainable finance with IFD, EBRD, EIP, and many financial institutions. I want to give you some breakdown about what is existing now in Egypt, in National Bank of Egypt. Now we have 96 in the latest 2 years projects that already financed and pipeline in emissions reductions, in environmental friendly project, renewable energy, recycling, and saving energy. The total amount of finance from National Bank of Egypt, it's about 424 million euro. These loans were directed to equipment and machinery and aim to reduce carbon emissions and combat industrial pollution and maintain energy. If we want to see what is the future in our bank, we already, our partner Sidpec now in pipeline, a project that financed under the EPAB called is saving energy using heat to produce power in pipeline now. At the end, I would like to end it by saying there is no turning back. As sustainable is being as the sustainability is the leader now in the finance. It's profitable as business, benefiting in global community and our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ayman. Actually, it's our pleasure to have a project in the pipeline with EBAB 3 now about the combined heat and power project, and also another one to use energy efficient compressors in the compressed air system optimization. And this is reflects our cooperation between NBE and us, and also reflects our commitment in Sidpec to the climate action, actually. I want now to hear from Jadis about one subject that is not commonly discussed in our scope of, or our business as petrochemical industry, and especially in Egypt. I want to know from you what is the role of carbon markets in financing eco-friendly products?
I think, especially in this business, the carbon markets play an important role because you're looking into many projects where the financial feasibility is in big question. So, especially from the bank's perspective, understanding the implementation or the motivation for bioplastics or any low carbon petrochemical product might be really questionable, because I just mentioned the market size and the nascent situation of liquidity in the market. So from the bank's perspective, it would be, why would an investor want to invest in this? Because the business as usual seems good enough. But the commitment of any petrochemical company to create a low carbon product may actually prevail the bank's perspective of this investment. So that's where the carbon markets come handy, because any reduction there is awarded by carbon credits, or in other words, we are putting a price on carbon. So every carbon you're reducing is actually converted to a finance in the financial, in the global carbon markets. Of course, the carbon markets are also in the phase of a transition right now, because we are looking into different markets from voluntary to compliance, and especially voluntary carbon markets are growing really fast. And now it comes to the Paris Agreement and internationally transferable mitigation outcomes. So these all will play a role in actually financing these projects or any activity, business activity that converts the conventional petrochemical products to low carbon. It could be recycled, it could be bioplastics, or it could be just low carbon by other practice. And I think that's just, we need to put a price on carbon. Everybody agrees on that. And that needs to be internalized by the petrochemical industry by creating carbon credits. But when necessary, also a transaction of buying of carbon credits to make yourselves, your products, carbon, low carbon, so that you find a good market for them in an environment where the consumer rewards such products. And beyond the reputation and consumer side rewarding, there is all these border adjustment mechanisms coming up. It started with EU carbon border adjustment mechanism. Low carbon products will be part of our daily commerce, and because otherwise you will not really be able to find the market for your products in some parts of the region, starting with EU. So this is when the carbon credits come handy. It helps you to finance your projects, but they're also handy that for your residual emissions, you can actually buy them and dilute the intensity of your products.
Thank you for that elaboration, but actually it is still here argumental somehow in Egypt about the carbon credit and the carbon market. But I think we can have an area for opportunity for cooperation with you to elaborate and to tackle this kind of activities. I also need to have a question for my colleague, my dear colleague, Yasser. Do you think the bioplastic are one of the solutions for the pollution of plastic in the oceans, actually?
Thank you. Actually, the marine pollution is a very dangerous problem, especially the pollution with plastics. But actually, the reason for this problem is mainly the mismanagement of waste. Um, the waste that disposed and the plastics that disposed in the oceans and seas is the main problem, and the plastics that being thrown from the trading ships and all these things. So the mismanagement is the main problem, and we need the first. I think the first thing to solve this problem is to put and apply a restricted regulations for this mismanagement. And the second part in the solution can be the bioplastics. There is some researches tell us that what is biodegradable on land will biodegrade on the seas and under the water. But this is something good. But actually, if we put some good regulations and make some incentives for recycling, maybe I think will be the main part in the solution, and also the bioplastics can solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting this issue regarding the pollution in the oceans. But still, we have to focus on the driver of the business. Actually, the driver of the business is the economic factor, whatever it has come along the way. But I like what Mr. Ayman said about sustainability will drive the finance. Somehow it will drive it, but especially in Egypt and in Africa, we have a lot of other drivers to drive our development actually in developing countries like Egypt and the African countries. And also I like what it is said about business as usual is good enough. This is always the barrier and everyday barrier in any developing in and in any improvement. Actually, I like the word improvement most actually. So any barrier for improvement is always business as usual is very good, and we are satisfied. I made it all. Thank you for this informative and fruitful session. And actually, I thank all the attendees here, and also thank you for all our colleagues and our customers and our attendees and audience through the live streaming, because I think they are much more than who has access to the blue zone, according to the regulations here. So thank you, and thank you for all of you. And before finishing, I will leave the floor to our CEO just to have closing remarks about the session and to highlight our future strategy to add the bioplastic and how it will add some benefits to our company, and especially in regards our future status about acquiring the new company of Sidpec to be added to our company. So I think we need to hear from you about this issue. And thank you for the panelists today. Thank you.
you, Dr. Muhammad. Thank you. Thank you for my colleague, the panelist. Uh, all we know now, all the world, especially developed countries, is doing a fight for single-use plastic. And we understand that. There is a danger to use single-use plastic. But what else? The other choice is not so good. To choose the paper, we need to save the forest. We need to save the tree. To use the glass, we need to save the climate from pollution. The glass will use many energy. So there is not the good choice to use paper or to use the glass instead of single-use plastic. What is the best solution from our side? I see the best solution is to use renewable plastic. Okay. To use renewable plastic, we have some obstacles. So we need help, we need support to remove these obstacles, to go through, to go forward, to produce renewable plastics, bio-based plastic, non-toxic plastic. So we need support from all the world. As the world say, this problem for single-use plastic, so there is the other choice to support other producer to produce single-use plastic by bio-based or biodegradable plastic. This is what I want. This is the message from this session. Okay, for acquiring Sidco, it's a good business for both Sidpec and Sidco. Sidpec and Sidco have a lot of capacities not used. So if we can acquire the another sister company Sidco and will be one company, we have a choice to import the feed gas, and we have a big entity, big company. We can face any problems, we can face any obstacles in our road. I think this will be good for both companies, and this good message. There is no need more small companies. We need big companies can doing better than the small companies. And I think this in less than 1 year, inshallah, will doing this. Inshallah. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad.
Again, if there is any questions in between the attendees, okay, Mr. Adil.
It's not a question. Actually, it's a couple of comments. The first comment is that Sidicare Petrochemical is always taking the lead and always the first one in the row taking initiatives that support sustainability and support resource efficiency and energy efficiency. And this is not something new, as we know from a long time. For bio-based plastics or for biodegradable plastics, the recently issued waste management law supports the direction for the use of bio-based plastic, especially for single-use plastics. But still the barrier is that you need to create a complete ecosystem for the bio and bio-based plastic. I mean, starting from the production, use, collection, segregation, and the treatment to be degraded at the end. Because most of the people saying that because it is biodegradable, it will biodegrade by itself, but it needs special treatment facilities. So there is a need for creating a full value chain to handle a new product. Of course, incentives is needed. Incentive is needed in the phase of production because of the OPEX and the CAPEX high cost required for a new product. But additionally, I guess market-based incentives and the product preference incentives that direct the market to use say biodegradable or bioplastic single-use packaging instead of using the conventional could be a driving force that support the scaling up of producing biodegradable. So I guess
as Sidpec is taking the lead, you could do some policy advocacy in creating a product preference mechanism that directs the market towards the using of biodegradable single-use plastics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adil, and I think I believe that it is very important to hear from the Ministry of Environment and the Eco reputable entity to because you will we need you to support us in our new projects regarding the biodegradable plastic and the BLA project. And finally, if there is any other questions, I think we get to the end. And again and again, I thank you for Mr. Ayman Higazi and Mrs. Gediz Kaya, and thank you for the great effort and great presentation of my colleague, Mr. Yasser. And we all thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving us the opportunity to present our activities and our achievements in Sidpec. And I hope that we will continue in this development along the way. Thank you again, and see you in tomorrow side event in the green zone. Okay, thank you.